This is the Easy Betting Show. My name is Easy, or I'm just pretending to know what's going on. As you can see, I am talking about week one college football picks. This is part one of three shows I'm doing this week. One will be tonight, obviously. The next one is going to be tomorrow before the games start. I'm hitting shit. And then the third one is going to be, I don't know, Saturday morning maybe. I don't know. We'll figure the third one out. But I do have the first two planned tonight and tomorrow afternoon. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Thursday and Friday games. I won't be going through the entirety of the games because it's just too many of them. So I picked out 10 that I like that I'm personally going to be betting tomorrow and Friday. I'm going to be going through those, the best bets I have for them. If you watched the last show that I did for week 0, I had some player props in there. I don't have any player props for these, mainly because I'm not betting any myself because I can't make the drive like I did last week. And I'm not going to give out anything on here that I'm not going to be betting myself. So no player props this week. If you want player props in the future, let me know and I will get back on that. There are going to be some weeks where I'm definitely going to put some out there anyway, but I'll kind of gauge, people wanting it or not wanting it or not caring based off of kind of what I'm going to do with that. Also, last week on the week 0 pick, I didn't put out the units I was betting, just the plays that I was betting. I am going to be doing units on my bets from now on also, just because I want to be able to track with y'all how many units I'm up or down, each show and then throughout the season as well, just because I think that transparency is going to help. And I'll track it anyway. Might as well share it. So that's just kind of the things that I wanted to touch on beforehand. Like I said, 10 games that I'm going to be going through in this one. I'm going to talk more in depth on some than I am on others, but I'm not going to talk super in depth about anything, mainly because I know people's attention spans are short nowadays. I know mine is. So nobody wants to watch a 2-hour show. Well, some people do, and some people are good at it. I'm not good at it, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm basically just going to do my favorite points for each game or just things I want to talk about for each game and then give the play out. If you want more in depth on a game, feel free to message me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Be Easy Bets, which is on the screen, is my Twitter. So follow me on there and then shoot me a message and I can go more into depth about that game. If you don't care and you just want to, know what I have to say, then that's fine. That's what I'm doing on here. So works perfectly. With that being said, I'm just going to hop right into it and get started on the first game, which the first game that I like on this slate is North Carolina A&T at Wake Forest. The spread is 34.5. Both of these teams have sucked. Now, Wake Forest, obviously, other than last year, has been a decent team the last few years, but last year they weren't very good. They were on the bottom end of the ACC. They're projected to be on the bottom end of the ACC again this year. AT&T only won one game last year. I was their coach Vincent Brown's first season, but they just weren't very good. They do bring back their quarterback, Kevin White. He threw for 507 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're also bringing back Kenji Christian and Amani Jones, which were good players for them last year. But there's really just not much to talk about with this team. I mean, they're a 1-win team. They're probably not going to be a whole lot better this year. It's just kind of bottom of the barrel. Wake Forest, again, kind of the same thing, but just better. They only won 4 games last season. Didn't make a bowl game for the first time since 2015. They bring in a new quarterback, Hank Bachmeier, that should help with the passing game if he doesn't get sacked 70 times. The offensive line for Wake Forest was horrible last year. And they're not going to be great this year, but they do have a lot of the same linemen that are going to be veteran guys now. And after getting their ass beat all of last season, you got to think they're going to be better this year, even if better doesn't mean good. So I do think the offense is going to improve some. Um, but that being said, I mean, the weak point of Wake Forest team is their offensive line. And teams that are going to beat them are going to be teams that can abuse their offensive line. A&T can't do that. I mean, obviously there's a massive jump up in general anyway, but they only had 16 sacks in 11 games last year in the season. So the chances of them being able to beat up on this weak O line is just not going to happen. So even though I see Wake Forest is probably like a 6-6 team this year as like their ceiling, probably. Although I mean they could surprise me. You never know. I do have them covering this, so I'm taking Wake Forest minus 34.5. I got it at minus 114. So like I said earlier, I'm going to give you my units on these as well. I'm going to put 1.2 units, basically to win a unit on Wake Forest minus 34.5. I just think this is going to be a blowout, and A&T will probably be lucky to score. So not a fun first game to go over, but all games are fun when you win money on them. So that's what my goal is here. The next one isn't a whole lot better. We're staying in the state of North Carolina. Western Carolina at NC State. The spread on this one is 32.5. And I'm kind of going the opposite with this one. NC State is one of the like 8 teams in the ACC that have a chance at winning the ACC championship this year. Because of that, and because they play Tennessee next week, I think they use a fraction of their playbook in this game. They don't want to put anything on film for Tennessee. They don't want to put anything on film for the ACC teams that they play later on. And also, this could be a potential look-ahead spot for NC State, just, getting prepared for Tennessee because this is Western Carolina. Now, obviously, NC State's going to win this game, and they're probably going to win this game pretty handedly, but 32.5 just seems high to me. Western Carolina is a decent team. They have Cole Gonzalez as their quarterback, who had 28 touchdowns last season. And he had 30 or more pass attempts in over half their games too. So he's going to sling the ball. They're also third in passing in the FCS last season. So they should be able to move the ball some, even if it's just in the second half against NC State's backups. They're most likely going to put points on the board. So even though NC State could easily win this game by 60, I don't think they're going to pull out all the stops for this game. I think they're going to try to hide some stuff for Tennessee next week. Their starters won't be in all that long, I don't think. And the Catamounts have a shot at scoring some points in the game early because they, like I said, they can sling the ball. But especially once the backups come in for NC State, they're definitely going to score some points. So I think this has potential for just a cover in general, but there's definitely a good place for it being a backdoor cover, which is why I'm high on this. So I'm taking Western Carolina plus 32.5. I got this at minus 115. So again, I'm putting 1.2 units on it to win a unit. Like I said, again, it's not really a fun one, but it's one that you can win money off of. That being said, I don't think NC State's going to be a bad team by any means. Like I said, they have a chance at the ACC championship. They're going to be a good team this year. And I'm really excited about Grayson McCall for them coming into the ACC and putting up numbers. I think he's going to be really good. Next game is actually, I think, going to be a fun one. So a little bit of a turn. Lafayette at Buffalo. The spread is 3.5 here. And I think this is just going to be a fun game. Lafayette kind of surprised the FCS last year. They were terrible 2 years ago. They weren't really expected to do all that much last year. And then they ended up making the playoffs in the FCS last year, which surprised a bunch of people. They have a really strong run game, mainly with Jamar Curtis, who's their running back. He's in the mix for the Walter Payton Award this year, which is like the FCS's Heisman. So they're going to rely heavily on him, especially against this Buffalo team that's run defense has been terrible the last 3 seasons. It's supposed to be a little bit better this year, but it's not something that you can trust, being that it wasn't just last year they were bad. It's the last 3 years they were bad. So they shouldn't, even if they do get better, again, better doesn't mean good. So I think Lafayette's going to have a good chance of just running all over them. Also, the offense isn't really something you can trust with Buffalo. Last year in their 6 MAC games, they didn't break 14 points, and 4 of those were at home. So they didn't score more than 2 touchdowns in 6 MAC games and 4 of them at home. That's horrible. So again, not a team you can trust really on either side of the ball. So I don't know. I really like Lafayette. I have Lafayette plus 3.5, but there's a really good shot Lafayette could win this game outright. Buffalo has lost in 2 straight years to a Patriot League team, which Lafayette is, and it could easily be 3 years in a row. Lafayette is a veteran team. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be, good on the ground, and I think that's just sets up success for them against Buffalo. So like I said, my play for this one is Lafayette plus 3.5. The odds on that I got are minus 115. So once again, I'm going to do 1.2 units to win a unit, which is going to be the case in the majority of these. It's going to be 1.2 to win a unit, just because I like to bet to win a unit rather than bet a unit to win a fraction. But these are my units. I'm going to do with them what I want. I'm not telling you to do what you want with your units. Do whatever you want with them. But this is just what I'm doing. So yeah. Next game that I'm going to be talking about is another rough one. And this one is Murray State at Missouri. The spread is 48.5, which is crazy that a game is almost 50-point spread. Like, what are we doing? But I'm basically talking about this for 2 reasons. Murray State's horrible. I mean, they're basically a basketball school, and Missouri has probably one of the better offenses. I mean, they're ranked 11th for a reason. So Missouri obviously is going to win this by a lot. But the over-under on this one is 57.5. I'm betting the under 57.5. My reasoning for this is Murray State is horrible. They're not going to score. They maybe get a touchdown at the end of the game, but Missouri's probably going to pull their starters by halftime. So it'll be like 35-42 nothing at the half, and then they'll maybe score 1 or 2 more touchdowns. I'm expecting this to be like 49 nothing, 49-7, somewhere in there where the under cashes. Missouri is kind of like the NC State game. They're not going to use their whole playbook. They're not going to want to show much on tape. So they're going to basically just run the ball probably. Also, Brady Cook probably isn't going to do much, Missouri's quarterback. Again, because they don't want him to get hurt, obviously. They don't want to show much. So they're just going to run the ball. And then the starters are going to sit and nothing's going to happen. And then they maybe score 1 or 2 touchdowns. I mean, this game could easily be like 69 to nothing, and I'm wrong here. To me, this game screams take the under. And if you're in a state where you can bet Murray State points, I would probably take that too. I can't here in Virginia. I don't think they're going to score. I think it's going to be 49-52 to nothing, and the under cashes because Murray State was helpless. So under 57.5, minus 115. Once again, 1.2 units to win a unit. And that's pretty, to me, that's just a pretty easy one. Like I said, it could easily be 69-72 to nothing. I just think the starters are going to get pulled and they're going to run the clock. And yeah, the kickers, I mean, they could kick some field goals, which would probably help the under because I don't think Murray State's even going to get in field goal range. The only reason that they would get in field goal range is Missouri screws something up and they like get a turnover or muff a punt or something in their red zone or something, or the third string guys are in for Missouri and they happen to score then. Those are the only chances I see of Murray State doing anything in this game. So You're basically relying on Missouri taking out their starters at halftime and the backups just running the clock. That's what I think is going to happen. So that's what I got there. The next game is also a massive spread because week one teams don't like to play real teams. They just go and play a NIAU school. You know what I'm trying to say. Kansas. No, sorry. Lindenwood at Kansas. If Kansas was at Lindenwood, that would be nuts. But no, Lindenwood is at Kansas. The spread is 44.5. So again, basically a 50-point spread, which is just nuts. And I'm not even really going to talk about this one much. This is going to be an absolute slaughter. Lindenwood, I didn't even know had a football team until I started researching this game. Kansas is going to have a pretty good team this year. They got a shot at the Big 12, in my opinion. They're probably like the fourth, maybe third, but probably fourth best team in the Big 12 to me. And this is just going to be a blowout. I mean, I know I just talked about Missouri possibly hitting the under because they're going to pull their starters and not score. Kansas, of course, against Lindenwood is also going to pull their starters. I think the backups can probably score against Lindenwood. It's going to be an ugly game. And Leipold is definitely going to call the dogs off for Kansas. He's just one of those guys that does that. But like I said, I still think they score. And this could easily be 42-0 at halftime, and then they just got to kick a field goal. Because I don't think Lindenwood's scoring either. So to me, this just seems like way too much sense. Kansas minus 44.5, minus 115 once again. I'm putting 1.2 units on it to win a unit, like I have been every single time so far. So it's been pretty easy to follow. The next game is probably going to be one of, if not the best game of the day for the Thursday slate. And that is UNC at Minnesota. It's a 1.5 point spread right now. It was like 3.5 to Minnesota's side, and then it flipped to 1.5 to UNC. So there was some line movement here, which is interesting. But I mean, it's still the same two teams playing. It flipped because Minnesota has some injuries, but I don't think it's really injuries that are going to affect it too much. Obviously, Drake May is gone for UNC. They have the two new quarterbacks that they're coming with this year is Max Johnson from Texas A&M last year and Connor Harrell. They're both expected to play in this game. To me, using two quarterbacks in a game like that is typically something I like to fade because I think it can mess up rhythm. I think it can mess up chemistry a little bit on the field. And to me, it's not something that I like. They do have a Marion Hampton back at running back, and he rushed for over 1,500 yards last year. He was really good. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, running backs in the ACC this year. But Minnesota's defense held him to less than 3 yards a carry last year. So if they can do that again this year, you're relying on two quarterbacks to make plays. And they also lost their top two receivers from last year. So they're going to be throwing to new guys, which could potentially mess up some things as well. On top of that, UNC's defense was horrible last year. But they do bring back some key guys, and they got some guys in the portal. So the defense should be a little bit better this year than it was last year. But again, that's not really saying much because they sucked. On the other side of the ball, Minnesota, on the other side of the field, God, I can't talk tonight. This is terrible. Minnesota, they went 6-6 last year, so they're definitely trying to improve there, especially with this new Big Ten mega conference. They have a new quarterback in Max Brosmer, who lit it up last year at New Hampshire. He led the FCS with almost 3,500 passing yards. He has a 29-6 touchdown to interception ratio. He's going to be very good for this team, I think. They also bring back Darius Taylor, who was a good running back for them last year. He had 800 yards rushing in only 6 games before he got hurt. So being healthy back this year, he should be pretty good for them, and that should kind of help the passing game with Brosmer, and then Brosmer should help the run game, and their offense should just kind of meld together really well. in my opinion. They also should be better on defense this year, but again, they were good against UNC's running game last year. So if they can be even better this year, I don't see. I think they win the game. I think Minnesota is going to win in a very tight game. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I have Minnesota money line plus 106. I'm putting a unit on this. So not 1.2 this time, but I am betting a unit on it. Minnesota money line. I think they get the job done. It's at Minnesota, I'm pretty sure, unless I screwed up. And I think their offense comes together really well. I think they're going to be able to run the ball really well, throw it down the field against UNC. They're basically on offense going to be able to do whatever they want, I think. And as long as their defense can stop Amarion Hampton, I think they should win the game. It's probably going to be like a field goal, maybe a touchdown game, though. So it will be tight. The next game is the one that everybody I've seen has been talking about. And you're probably talking about it too, because it is North Dakota State at Colorado. And Dion is Dion, and everybody talks about Dion for good reason. The spread on this one is 9.5, and I think it's going to be a good game. It's a game that the two types of football you can play are going to be playing against each other. North Dakota State plays physical, aggressive football. Colorado plays fast, down the field football. And those two are going to go at it to see, hey, which one's better. Which, but whatever. I think the Buffalo's O-line is going to struggle again this year. They're bringing in a bunch of new guys. They do get the lineman back from last year that had to be basically was ineligible for the season, which made absolutely no sense, but he's coming back. So I do think they're going to be better this year than they were last year, especially down the road. But game one with a bunch of new pieces, I think they're going to struggle in this one. And the physicality that North Dakota State's going to bring is going to affect that. North Dakota State does have a new coach this year. Tim Polasek, I believe is his name. Polasek. I don't know. Tim. His name's Tim. But he is getting most of Ent's team from last year. So as long as he can go in and just maintain the pace, essentially, they shouldn't miss a beat. And on top of that, they're retooling their offensive line this year. They got a couple guys in the portal. So their line was good last year, but it wasn't North Dakota State good last year. So there's a potential that it's rebolstered back to kind of what it's been in the last decade prior. So I think that even helps them as well. They also have a pretty good defense, and they have a few guys on defense that can get to the quarterback really well. And against this offensive line, that should really help this game out. So I think Colorado wins, but I think they win by like 3 or 4. I don't think they cover the spread. So I'm taking North Dakota State plus 9.5. This one's minus 110. So I'm putting 1.1 units on it to win a unit. Hopefully everybody's still with me. Moving on to the Friday games, which I have 3 of. The first one that I'm going to talk about is FAU at Michigan State. The spread on this is 14.5. And this is, again, 2 teams that sucked last year. They both went 4-8. They both have fairly new coaches. Tom Herman, second year at FAU. Jonathan Smith, first year at Michigan State. He's coming in from Oregon State last year, and he's bringing in a bunch of guys with him. Aiden Childs, the quarterback. He's also bringing in tight end Jack Vierling, who had 428 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. So I think he's going to be a big piece of this offense. They also bring back from Michigan State, bring back 2 receivers in Montori Foster. I think that's how you say it. And Jaron Glover. And they're also bringing back Nate Carter at running back. All 3 of them were pretty good for this team last year, so you would expect them to maintain that pace this year as long as Aiden Childs can get it to him. He did back up DJU last year, so he didn't get a ton of production last year, so it's kind of we'll see what happens with him. But they're expecting him to be decent. So we'll see. the thing with Michigan State is their defense was awful last year. And on top of it being awful last year, it's mainly new faces this year. And of course, that could be good later on in the season. You got to think if they were awful last year, you probably don't want the same kids there anyway. But first game of the season, they're probably going to not have the chemistry that they need. And so I think they're probably going to struggle. On the other side with FAU, they have a new quarterback in Cam Fancher, who's spent the last 3 seasons at Marshall. So he has seen some good Sun Belt play. He was decent there, but he did throw 17 picks to only 21 touchdowns. So he does give the ball up a lot. I just don't think that's really going to be a problem against the Michigan State's defense, at least in this game. They do have a new receiving core. They lost a lot of guys in the receiving core this year. They got Marlon, I don't know, probably Marlon Johnson that comes in from Buffalo. He should give them a big boost. He was pretty good at Buffalo last year. And he's going to be alongside BJ Alexander, who was on the team last year, and Milan Tucker. And then the rushing game doesn't really have a lot of returning production either. The only guy that's really coming back in the running back room is Zuberi Mobley, who didn't really do much. I think he had like 100 and oh no, that's the other guy. The other guy they brought in is CJ Campbell from Florida State, and he had 117 yards and 1 touchdown last year. So he didn't do much at Florida State. He was basically the cleanup duty guy. So a bunch of question marks on FAU. That being said, I'm going to take FAU to cover. Now, this spread, I might have messed it up a minute ago. This spread is 13.5. I'm betting FAU plus 14.5. I'm buying a point. It's minus 128 at 14.5. So it's still not that much juice with the extra point. But I think 14.5 is much safer than 13.5 for obvious reasons. I think this is like a 10-point game, but just in case it's a 14-point game, you want to be safe. So FAU plus 14.5, minus 128. I'm putting 1.3 units on this one to win a unit. And that's pretty much it. Next game is another just awful one that shouldn't be happening probably, but it is anyway, and we have to watch it and hopefully make some money off of it. Temple at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is 42.5 point favorites. Another one that's close to 50, and it's just ridiculous. I'm not going to talk much about this one either. Oklahoma's got in just a really good offense. They're good on defense. You know, they're one of the teams in the SEC. I don't know really where they stack in the SEC. They're probably like, I don't know, top 6, maybe top 5 in the SEC. They're top half. So Temple is going to get blown out in this one. I don't think Temple's going to score except for maybe in garbage time or if Oklahoma does something stupid. That's pretty much it. I will say I'm buying a point on this one too, though, because once those backups come in, you never really know what's going to happen. So this easily could be like a 42-0 game or a 49-7 game, and then the 41.5 you get hooked. 42.5 you get hooked. So I'm betting Oklahoma minus 41.5. That's minus 140, which is juiced a little bit more than I like to go, but I wanted to buy that point. So if you don't want to take that much juice, you can still bet Oklahoma minus 42.5. I'm just not as confident on it. I'm betting Oklahoma minus 41.5. Minus 140. I'm putting 1.4 units on it to win a unit. Last game of my slate, TCU at Stanford. Now, this spread is 9.5, and this should be a good game too. Sonny Dykes at TCU, he had a rough season last season after being in the national championship 2 years ago. He's going to want to turn that around. He got a lot of pieces in the offseason to try to get back on track. A lot of those pieces were in the offensive line. And they also have 2 quarterbacks that can push each other to produce. They have second-year Josh Hoover and Vanderbilt transfer Ken Seals, which to me sounds like a guy that would be on infomercials. And they're also going to have some guys to throw it to. Their receiving core, I think, is going to be really strong this year. They got their 2 top receivers from last year returning, and they have 2 more good guys in the portal. So they're going to be strong throwing the ball. The quarterbacks just have to get it to them. And like I said, I think those 2 quarterbacks, Seals and the other one, Hoover, Seals and Hoover, I think are going to push each other to be better. It's always good to have that competition, and I think that helps them. So, good offensive line, great receivers, question marks at quarterbacks. On the Stanford side, they're coming off a 3-9 season. Troy Taylor is in his 2nd year coaching there. He had a rough season last year. And I think the defense is going to suck. It was bad last year. I think it's going to suck this year, at least early in the season. Maybe later on in the season they get better. I don't think it's going to be very good Friday, though. And they don't have a ton going for them on offense, in my opinion, either. I mean, they have an All-American receiver in Alec Ayomanor. I probably screwed up both of his names there. Alec Ayomanor, Ayamanor. I don't know. Y'all know who I'm talking about. He's an All-American. He's really good. I think their quarterback, Ashton Daniels, is going to rely on him pretty heavily. I think the offense is pretty much going to run through him, or a lot of it's going to run through him, because they don't really have much of a run game. In the last couple of years, their quarterbacks have pretty much been the leading rushers on the team, or at least been the standouts of rushing on the team. And Cedric Irvin is the primary running back this year. They're going to rely on him a lot. I think the quarterbacks are going to have to run the ball again like they have in the past. So just based off of kind of what I don't like about Stanford here, I'm going to be going with Sonny Dykes on this one. I'm betting TCU minus 9.5. That's minus 110. So I'm betting 1.1 units on it. And then 2 other quick ones that I'm just going to throw out that I'm not going to actually talk about. So I'm not going to count them. But if you just want extra stuff, I'm also betting Western Michigan plus 23.5 and UCF minus 39.5. So 2 little extra ones there if you want them. But that's all I got for today. So I'll go through them real quick just in case you missed something. TCU at Stanford, I have TCU minus 9.5. Temple at Oklahoma minus 41.5. FAU at Michigan State, FAU plus 14.5. And then back to the Thursday games, North Dakota State at Colorado. I have North Dakota State plus 9.5, but I think Colorado wins. UNC at Minnesota. I got Minnesota money line. Kansas at Lindenwood. I got Kansas minus 44.5. I think they win by a shit ton. That is a unit of measurement. Murray State at Missouri. I am taking the under 57.5. My only over-under for the day. Lafayette at Buffalo. I'm taking Lafayette plus 3.5. Western Carolina at NC State. Western Carolina plus 32.5. And Wake Forest minus 34.5 over NC-A&T. And that does it for me tonight. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Make sure to hit the like button for me if you could, because that really helps me out. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And yeah, that's it. Hop on with me tomorrow, probably at around 4:30. Hop on with me, and we'll talk part 2. Thanks for hanging out.